People usually fall into one of the two camps. Either they just reflect and they never do anything, or they just do stuff all the time and they can't figure out why things aren't working. But the people that are highly successful is that they take action, and then they have times where they reflect on what's working and what's not, and they go and they evaluate.
Welcome to The Conscious Investor. Let's get started. Conscious Investors, welcome back to another incredible episode. In fact, we've had to reschedule this podcast recording previously, and now there's a sacrifice being made so that this podcast can be recorded even right now. And I am over the moon to be featuring my friend Bronson on this show, The Conscious Investor, as you know, right now. And before we dive into that, I have so much more to say. I just want to remind you that if you are looking for a strategy to, mitigate your tax liabilities, if you're looking for a way to reduce your liability when it comes to your taxes, because let's face it, as we make money, the taxes can be exorbitant. And I'll never forget writing a check for $40,000 after already paying all the estimations. And that was because we weren't aligned with the right company. So if you are looking for someone that will help reduce your taxes and help you make the gains that you want and use your money how you want to use it, because you use it in great ways, because you're conscious investors, make sure you check out Mode Wealth. They are a fantastic boutique company, very specifically tailored towards real estate, investors, professionals, and as entrepreneurs as well. So we love them. They've saved us so much money, and I loved getting an extra kickback last year, if you will, from the government, because they changed us our entity. So anyhow, so many strategies that we didn't know about and you might not know about that can be implemented to help you. So I'm going to go back into this amazing podcast episode, but I had to share that with you because we need those reminders. And by the time this podcast airs, you are going to be thinking probably about end of the year taxes and things like that. So let's just make sure you're dialed in with the right people. All right. So Bronson is here, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've been looking forward to this. I'm recording 5 hours worth of content today, and everybody's phenomenal. However, this single Bronson, this is the episode I was most looking forward to recording today because I love your journey. And so before I start trying to tell Bronson's journey, how about I say, hey, Bronson, welcome to the show, and let's talk about it. Welcome.
Julie, so good to be here. So appreciate you as well, and have so much respect for you and for this show and for all the things that you're doing and just getting to know you over the years. So really excited to be here. And like I was sharing, I'm actually on a retreat this week. So I have a couple of days that I'm out. If people are watching this and not listening to it, they can see the background of kind of the mountain cabin style place of staying. So I'm excited, but this is the only interview I'm doing this week, and I'm just really excited to share with you because I think it really fits in with the theme of being on a retreat and being conscious of what you're doing and be aware and being mindful and reflecting and prayer and all that stuff. So super, super excited. So so I can get into my story and share a little bit. So just my investing journey in general. I was a well-paid professional. I worked at a company, different company, medical device sales companies for about 10 years. I would go into surgery. I would help physicians with their heart surgical devices. And I was making really good money. I was making $200,000 to $250,000 a year. I was actually really only able to work I could get it down to about 20 to 30 hours a week inside a lot of other hobbies and things I was doing. But I've always been somebody who wants to create. I've wanted to do something on my own. I've wanted to be entrepreneurial, and I've wanted to really work those things into my life that I really value, being conscious of those things, right? Like travel. I've been able to travel 5 times internationally this year. I've read 51 books this year, and it's in September 1st. So I just, these things that I really value, spending time with family and all the different things. So I thought, to become financially free in real estate, you hear the stories of people doing it. And then I thought, well, I need to start with single family because that's what I've got money to do, what I can do. So I started buying single family houses in another state. And then I realized it was a lot of work, and I had 4 or 5 houses. It really wasn't getting any cash flow. And so I have a cousin who said, hey, he's a multifamily guy, been doing it 25, 30 years. And he's like, why don't you do multifamily? And I said, well, I'd love to, but I don't have the money. And he said, well, you can raise the money. So I started learning about syndication, which I know is what you do as well, and how to raise money and how to help other investors to become passive for the reasons that you shared about reducing taxes, to grow your wealth without taking up more of your time. And that's really a challenge for a lot of professionals. And I've actually spoken one-on-one with about 1,300 different professionals and business owners and retirees. And it's been an amazing journey of just learning. And so I was able to do that for a few years. We got to where I raised about $15 million, had about $60 million in real estate. And then about a year ago, I was actually able to leave my great corporate job, having replaced my living expenses, which is one form of financial freedom. That's kind of your rat race number, right? Once you can replace your living expenses, then you can live, and you're going to be okay. So now we have about 200 million in real estate, and have raised close to 30 million, and just loving like this midweek being able to come up here and do a retreat and reflect and do the things I value. So that's a little bit of my journey.
I love it. And actually that was very succinct. I mean, you really definitely were able to collapse like years into this little window. And I'm really impressed with that. I'm listening and thinking like, wow, that's an art form in and of itself. So let's back up a little bit, because a lot of conscious investors right now are exactly where you were, right? They believe I have to go through the process of, I have to start with single family, go into small multifamily, and then I can go into apartments. And I want to like kind of maybe bypass that part right there and talk about, because I know you invested passively.
Yeah, so I did do some passive, or I would say, well, when I first started, I was doing active with single family. And then honestly, my first deal, kind of how I got started. A lot of people say, well, how do I get started? Like, it's great once you're going. And it is true, especially in finance or a lot of other things, it's hard to kind of get going. And so how do you start? One way is through passive investing. I didn't actually start through passive investing. I started through, I just read as many books as I could on real estate, on multifamily, and just it kept coming up about starting a meetup. So I live in the Los Angeles area, Pasadena. So I have this meetup now that we've been going on 4 years, but I'd started it even before I had any multifamily property. I just started a meetup. And so at the first meeting, I partnered with somebody else who had a real estate meetup, but it wasn't multifamily. And I just said, hey, let's do a meetup. You show up and we'll call it, we'll kind of make it a subset of your brand, and I'll do all the work and you just show up. So she said, that sounds great. And so the first meeting, we had 60 people, Julie, and one guy.
That's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Yeah. And so, being in a big metro is obviously helpful, but at this time, there really weren't I don't know if there were any multifamily meetups, or very few multifamily meetups in California. So, started the meetup, met a guy who showed up and he said, hey, I'd invest in one of your deals. And I thought, man, I don't even have a deal. This is great. So I ended up getting him for coffee, and I showed him a sample deal. This is what a deal would look like. Would you be interested? And he said, yeah, I'd probably put $100K into that. So I said, oh, awesome. So then I also met somebody else at that same meeting who was, had a deal looking for money. And so I basically was able to, bring that investor to that deal. And that was my first $100K raise. And now I became a general partner in a deal. So it's funny how, when people are starting out, you don't have to have all this, tons of experience, whatever. And there's a difference between being an expert in the space and being a leader in the space, right? You can be a leader in the space where we did an interview style meetup, or we had somebody come in, we did some education, whatever. And I'm asking all the questions along with everybody else, right? So I think when you start, it's okay to say, I don't really know how to do this. That's why I'm here asking questions, because almost everybody has the same questions that you have. So I think when starting out, I think it's important to realize there's multiple ways to do it. And, passive investing is one way to learn, which is really valuable. Another way is just to try to go to as many events and learn everything you can, and just be aware of kind of the, the needs around you.
It's like the coolest story ever. You know what? Have you read the book, The Alchemist?
I have. Follow the omens. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Love it. Yeah.
And I'm my book club's currently reading a book, How Are You Really by Jenna Kutcher. It's it's written from a very feminine perspective. That's her niche and everything. But the book is like super wow, deep and profound. I think it's for all people, and very insightful for the gentlemen in our book club also to see things from a feminine perspective. Right. But she's talking about one foot. Once I'm just going to take this step, right? And so you take that step of, I'm going to go to a meetup. Okay, now I'm going to have my own meetup. And courage is rewarded. I say that on an ongoing basis. And so you take this courageous step and boom, not only, I mean, like, who gets that one step? Here's money and here's a deal. That's so phenomenal.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You brought up a couple of things. So Brené Brown is she's my favorite author. Brené Brown,
she's
her
amazing.
books of Gifts of Imperfection. I actually went through a divorce 6 years ago and I found that book, and I was pretty raised religious. And I just think everybody in the world should really read this book. It's so good about embracing your story, leaning into discomfort and just really going for it. But she has this idea of, when we're creative. So for you, you're a creator, you're creating a podcast, you're creating investments, you're creating, blogs and opportunities for people to connect with you. And that's vulnerable. Because, then you will start to develop some critics. People are like, well, who's Julie thinks she is? You start to develop people to say things. And that's, I think, when we think about it, that's kind of what we're afraid of when we put ourselves out there, right? We're afraid of kind of the naysayers or what's our family and what are our friends going to think. But in reality, Brené talks about how when we're doing well, we allow, we're basically presenting our creative gifts to the world. And there's not creative people and non-creative people. It's not like, every kid is creative. Every kid, no matter, like, they all create art. My daughter, she's 9. When she would just create so much stuff, like every day. Just like content creation machine, just like all the time, everywhere. But as we get older, we start to get concerned about what people think and what does it look like. But I think, like you said, courage is rewarded. And I think there's some gender things around that too, where I think in general, guys they're generally more willing to, like, I think they did a study and they found that, like, if a guy had half of the qualifications for a job, he was willing to apply. But a woman had to have, like, all of the qualifications to apply. And I don't know what that is. I don't know why that is, but I just think, especially for women, we really need to encourage women to take more risks and really put ourselves out there, because fortune does favor the bold. And so it's always going to feel like a stretch, man or woman, you do something you've never done, it's going to feel hard. But as you get comfortable being uncomfortable, that's where all the growth happens.
Oh, I love that. By the way, was that a Ryan Holiday quote right there?
Comfortable being uncomfortable. I don't know.
Fortune favors the brave.
Fortune favors the bold. Yeah, that's a famous. I don't know if that's Seneca or there's some famous old classic person. That's not my quote.
It's based in Stoicism. I just know that. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I read that in maybe Courage is Calling or something. Right. All things. I love Ryan Holiday. Love what he puts out there. So let me ask you this. Because amen to everything that you're saying. And it's interesting how, however our upbringing is, and we're all raised with whatever worldview our home environment has and that we're structured in. So whether or not you were raised in a obviously religious home or not, so listeners, like whatever environment you're raised in, like that's the worldview that you are indoctrinated with, if you will. And you really can't change that. But as we mature in life, as we go through our transformative journey, we can really see what parts of that are ours and what parts we can dismiss. And it allows so much freedom. Yeah,
it does. It really, it basically, we have a choice of how, especially as an adult, how we respond. There's actually a great program I did years ago called Landmark. There's a group called The Forum. And so it's like a weekend kind of program you go. It's a 3-day, all-day thing. But basically what they do, there's a number of things they do, but they talk about in this event, we spend so much time basically just all of our current and future, evaluation of ourselves and our life is based on who we have been. And a lot of who we've been has been this painful experience happened to me when I was 5. And I could literally go through what it was. And it was like, this happened. And therefore I interpreted the world's not safe. I'm not okay. I feel shame, whatever. So then there's 2 things that happen. Right? There's what actually happened. I was walking home from school. These bullies came up and, they were mean to me, right? That's what happened. But to me, I made it mean something different. So we make a lot of meaning out of things, and then we continue to take that. So anytime anything happens, or I think about that going forward, versus allowing ourselves just to be like, well, what do I want to create? Who do I want to be? And it really feels very free. I mean, it sounds a little woo-woo, but I think in a way, if you can complete your past and you can kind of get through some of the stuff, okay, I've been through here, but now I made a lot of meaning that maybe it isn't true, but what do I want to create now going forward? And what I want my life to be about now. And I think that's the amazing part, is as you really start experiencing freedom, becoming conscious of your life, you can really make those choices, which is really awesome.
Gosh, I love that. I'm going to double down on that. And for me, like with my faith, my faith in Christ is exactly that. It's like, okay, well, you know what? Everything changed the moment I like solidified faith in Christ. It's like, oh, that's in the past, whatever. Forget about it. Forget about it. And like, just move forward, look to the future. There's so much hope and excitement ahead versus being tangled. But I love that because it's so critical. And in coaching clients, we go to the past, not to drag up the past, but to, like you're talking about, to heal the past, to shift our perspective and use it and leverage it. It can be so powerful. Gosh, I didn't know we were going to get to go here. That's super cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Appreciate that.
and not, don't want to be exclusive as well, but I'm also a follower of Jesus as well. I think of, there's a thing of being religious, and then there's having a relationship with Jesus. And I think they're different things. And I think the idea of, and I love that you're, bringing all these other things in as well, because I think it's just, there's so much value to, I love doing yoga, and I love reading Brené Brown. I love doing all these practices that I find that are reflective, because I just think it's, I don't know. And this is my own opinion, and this is not, to be shared. We don't have to go here really, but I think a lot of ways religion is more about, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but religion is more about rules, and it's about just, here's how you should live. Here's how you should be. And there's a lot of shame, either shaming myself if I don't measure up to these standards, which nobody can measure up to. And there can be shaming other people. It's like, oh, well, at least I'm not like them. At least I do these things. And I was that guy, and I didn't realize that until I got divorced. And then I was like, oh, wow. Like, I guess I was really legalistic. I guess I was really into rules and following all this. And then when that happened, it kind of really set me free to be like, I can live my own life, and I can really have my own walk with God and my own way of relating with myself. And it's just has led to this incredible, like, I would just say, just like joy that I never had. And it's released me from a lot of expectations of other people and myself.
Gosh, it's amazing how that happens. I experienced a really painful marriage divorce in my early adulthood and left a really destructive, very threatening situation. And all of that really opened up a floodgate of exactly like similar to what you're saying, not exactly, but my own version of that is to when I walked into the church and just thought to myself, I'm not going to not go to church because of all the labels I know people will put on me. I'm going to go to church because I love God, and I want to go to church, and I want to be there and to worship and to sing and to hear teaching and stuff. And that step of courage really shifted lines for me to say, you know what? It doesn't matter what other people, they're going to be the hypocrites. They're going to be the people that they need the structure and the religion, and they need to feel good, but I don't have to live by that. And I get to decide what the relationship looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is really empowering. I mean, just to go a little more into faith stuff and religion, I really think, and this is for people that are not religious as well, or didn't grow up religious, but I think that if Jesus were around today, he would offend all the religious people. He really would. He would go to church, and he wouldn't be accepted because, he offended all the religious people of his day, and they were the ones that ended up killing him. Right. And I had this revelation just a few years ago that, like, the idea of you having your relationship with God. And just when I have a Tuesday night kind of men's group, and we've got 10 or 12 guys that show up. And to me, like, that's to me what I think really Jesus was talking about when he was talking about, like, what is church? It's like getting together, sharing life. Guys, go through stuff. They have a breakup or they lose a job. We're there for each other. We're there to support each other. And we really are interested in trying to really help and pray and encourage and support. I just think it's so important. And I think, anyway, we can get kind of stuck in the should have, we could should all over ourselves, right? Like we should do this. I should do that. I should do this. And it's just like, I don't think that stuff doesn't even matter. And in the sense that, it matters how we live, but it's more an idea of sowing and reaping, right? If I go and I live wild and crazy, or if I get addicted to drugs, like, there's a consequence to that versus I should feel bad because, I should feel ashamed of myself or something. And it's like, I don't think that that's anything God ever wanted us to feel,
Oh man. Yeah. Preach it. That's interesting when I look at how my faith has supported my investing and leaving my job as a public school teacher to go into full-time investing and to take so many of the leaps that I've taken. Because for me, they were very big leaps. But I was able to do that because I'm thinking, I believe I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on. I believe I'm on a path that God's put me on. And so I can follow that in this confidence. And I can also show up and be vulnerable because I don't deal with the shame and I don't deal with it's okay. Like I'm okay. I'm okay right where I am. I'm not perfect, but I'm okay. And so it allows this freedom as we navigate life, as we navigate investing, as we go through every part of our life is amplified and it's like 5D, it's just so incredible. So I'm curious how that's affected your investing journey just over the last years of really having that awakening.
Yeah, well, I think for me, and again, this is a very personal podcast. I don't really share as much on this level, but I think for me, going through my divorce 6 years ago, it kind of got me, I think when everything was kind of settled. I'm 41, turning 42 this month. And I was, approaching 40. And I just said, life is too short not to go after your dreams and do what you really feel you're here to do, what God put you here to do, and in getting a hold of your purpose. And I think when I look at people that are really, that I admire, that are doing amazing things, there's this pursuit of their dreams. There's this pursuit of excellence. And I think that, it just goes back to that fortune favors the bold, and it's just being willing to move forward in the face of uncertainty and being willing to try and fail and not allowing failure. Like I failed in this, it doesn't mean I am a failure, right? I failed in this, but I learned a lot. So therefore it's a success. So if you can redefine what failure is and look at the risk of things, and I think the more you do, I think this is shifting gears a little bit, but the idea of like in our lives, when we start taking massive action toward our goals, we start taking massive action towards, and it can look like small actions, like, okay, I go to an event, I do, I eventually started meeting. It can just be small, subtle things over time, but just consistent, regular action. Yeah. We figured out on the way. And I've realized I had 8 years of like, I had a single family rental and I just didn't do anything for like 7 or 8 years. I was like, I would go to meetups, but I didn't do anything. Right. And it wasn't until I actually started doing something. I got in a mentorship program. I started connecting with people. I started trying things. I started buying houses in Cleveland. I just started doing stuff. And as you do things, you figure it out. And they're not going to be the right things. They're going to be maybe the wrong things. But for you, if you just try them, you're going to continue to like figure out what it is. Okay, I tried this didn't work, whatever. And you have to look at the action as being very, it gives information, right? It'll like, okay, this is going to work. Feedback. This is going to work. And I think that's the conscious part that I like is like, life is a great teacher. I have a friend who says that she's a psychologist and she says, you live and hopefully you learn. And it's not you live and you learn. It's not as I had to go through the same thing 3 or 4 times of like, oh, okay, now I get the lesson, whatever. Yeah, I shouldn't, be around this kind of person, or I shouldn't work with, whatever it is. But I think the idea of just learning from life, taking the feedback that life gives and being willing just to continue to put yourself out there, continue to try. Because all the people that we see we admire, they've taken lots of action. And that's how they've gotten where they are. And they just continue to not let it be a worth thing that, I'm worthy if I do this or not. That doesn't matter. It's just about you doing what you're here on this earth to do.
Gosh, I love it. I love it. And it's amazing because anyone who has arrived, if you will, anyone who's further ahead than we are, every one of us can. And Brendon Burchard always says one of the slippery slopes is, hey, if you start to think that, you've arrived and you don't need to ask other people's opinions and things like that, you're on the slippery slope to sliding down off the mountaintop because there are always people further ahead. The mountain is endless. And so keeping that in mind with what I'm about to say is like recognizing that there are people that are further ahead than you are, and to say, okay, but they've been able to do this. They have risked so much to get there. The amount of risk of ego, the amount of financial risk, the time risk, the relationship risk, everything gets risked when you are willing to pursue something. And those who are willing to go all in are really, it's not a surprise that, they're successful. They're successful because they're willing to go all in and not let all of the tentacles of the naysayers and the spectators in life just like suck them and pull them down. Almost like the Matrix, those little things that would go.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think another thing too is like a lot of times I think people think, I've got to go all in. I've got to like put all my money into one deal, or I've got to quit my job tomorrow. And I think that there's, I just think about like, what's the downside if something doesn't go the way I want it, right? If something doesn't go according to plan, and it's like, oh, okay, I'm usually like, a good thing is like, I'm out some time, or maybe I feel a little embarrassed, or just something didn't work out, whatever. But if I lose like, a high percentage of my net worth, or if I get physically injured in a severe way, or like, but those are not, the risks that I think we're talking about. It's more about, hey, how can we find, minimal downside? But a lot of it is like, there's huge upside. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, that I've done. It's like you can have a 10, 20, 100x upside. And the downside is maybe you're out some time and you, okay, maybe you don't want to go that way, but you learn, even the positive of that is you would have learned, okay, this is not a good fit. One of the best stories that I share that's also really painful is when I had my net worth was only maybe, 200,000 or so. I lost $70,000 in one day doing options trading. And that was a hard day.
That's painful.
I remember I was wearing my medical scrubs. I was coming out to the car and the market's getting ready to close, and it just closed in such a way. I had this complex options trading strategy. And yeah, it was really hard. I felt those feelings. Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a failure. I feel like I felt all those things. But I think from that, I learned complex options trading strategies are not my strength, right? So it was very valuable. And I know people that have lost millions of dollars in real estate or other things. And those people are uber wealthy. Like a lot of people that are like billionaires or 100 millionaires, like they've lost sometimes all their money multiple times, or they've had major, major losses. So you learn a lot from the experiences that are challenging. But again, I wouldn't recommend people, you can learn from my experience, maybe do that from your own, but for some people that's great. Just for me, it wasn't. So
I appreciate that you added some clarification on what going all in means. And really it's like, it is understanding what is all in for me. Right. I mean, over the summer months, my all in is different, and I'm navigating a lot of different things with having my kids at home. Well, I am all in with my kids, but I'm all in with my business. What does that look like? Right. So you have to really define, like, I think really one of the strands that's running through this entire conversation is the willingness to be flexible, the willingness to stretch and grow, instead of saying I'm fixed and I made a decision and this is where I'm staying. It's and that's been a huge lesson for my life, is to say, well, I am okay. During the summer months, my life looks different. And during the fall, it looks different. During the different ages of my kids and the different activities they're involved in, my life looks different. I can still be all in over in my business because I feel completely called to what I'm doing with my real estate and my coaching. So it's like, okay, I can be all in over there and I can be all in with my family. It's just a matter of having a flexible framework to work within. So how do you do that you're pretty flexible. If you're not already following Bronson over across the social platforms, you need to do that, especially on LinkedIn, because that's the best platform ever. Because he's always posting these really great antidotes and, like his travels and things like that. So you can tell you are all in your business, but you're all in actually living your life.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think the idea of how do you do that, right? How does it actually? But I think just like today, I'm at a retreat, and I have I can't really see it behind me. I don't know if you can see it, but I have a whiteboard. And I'm going to put the whiteboard up and just, evaluate different areas of my life and how's this going. And I think Brendan Bouchard, you mentioned, he talks about that. How can you live at a level 10 in every area of your life, in your relationships and your family and, your business and other things that you do. So I started to really look at, what do I value? And when you have a personal, mission statement, you have personal values, you have goals, it's really clarifying. And I think before we were talking about creating goals earlier, and that's kind of what I'm doing here for my business and creating some vision for that. But personally, a lot of people create goals, but they don't start at a place of, who am I and what do I value? And there are events that you can go and do that. You can figure that out, but you have to get to a heart space of just, what makes me angry? What makes me excited? What have I been good at? What do I feel like I come alive when I do it? And then you kind of realize like, oh, this is kind of why I'm here. This is my purpose. And I think anybody, whether somebody's a person of faith or not, we all have those things that we light up when we talk about, or when we get excited about it. And it's more, and there's really energy behind it. And I think those are limited. There's only a fair number of things that we have that we're really excited about. But once we can put that down on paper, we can figure out this is who I am. And then from there, you can create some really meaningful goals in that. So to me, I realized like I value adventure. I value travel. I know you do your biking. You said once a week. I remember you talked about it before. You go out and you do that and you value that. So to me, I'm able to live. I just planned. I'm going to Patagonia, November, December for a week for a hiking trip, and then I just planned a Barcelona trip for January for a week. So this stuff, like I just continue to try to work things in, such as learning and reading and conferences and people. And sometimes I have to step back and realize, okay, maybe I'm doing too much. Maybe I'm doing too much travel. Maybe I'm doing too much of this. Let me just sit back and figure out, what am I really trying to create here? So I think it's this constant doing and reflecting. And people usually fall into one of the two camps. Either they just reflect and they never do anything, or they just do stuff all the time and they can't figure out why things aren't working. But the people that are highly successful is that they take action, and then they have times where they reflect on what's working and what's not, and they go and they evaluate. So I have some friends that are exceptionally good at this, and they've achieved some amazing things. So that's something that I think is, and I think it's good. I like you have conscious investor, right? Conscious is more like reflective and what am I actually looking at? And then investor is action. What am I doing, right? What am I actually putting I'm all investing, right? Like I'm all into this as an investor. Yeah. So it's cool.
Oh, that's awesome. One practice that I have not been, I'm giving full transparency. I've not been faithful to this practice, but it's a practice that I have to recommit to. And that is having a thinking day. So I had a thinking day scheduled once a month on my calendar. And there's this relationship that sometimes we have, and it is interesting. This is very conscious investors. I'm always transparent with you. And so it's a matter of, are we honoring that time that we set aside on our schedule, or are we allowing other things? So I love that you're out investing and serving your investors and growing everybody's portfolios and everything. But I'm going to take time and I'm going to go travel and feed my soul and have these experiences. And then I'm going to take that back and share that with the world. You've honored that time. Right. So when we honor the commitments that we make, even to ourselves, we invite an entirely different opportunity into our lives. So my thinking day, I've not been honoring it. That's my point.
Okay, but accountability, you got to do it.
Yeah. So the purpose of the thinking day is to go and reflect. Take the calendar from the last 3 months or from the last month and say, what did I achieve? What worked? What didn't work? All of those things, and just weaving that in each day. So if you're listening and you're looking for, okay, well, I can't, which we know I don't like the word can't. I'm not in a position, so I'm going to reframe that. I'm not in a position at the moment to go away for 2-3 days, but I can get away for one day. And it will be, maybe it's a stretch for you, but you have to have your starting spot. And if you really want to invite that change and transformation into your life, you have to be willing to go in, and anything worth having in life will require sacrifice. Sacrifice is the price of admission. And so you're sacrificing maybe time, finances, whatever it is, maybe a comfort level. But if you're not willing to sacrifice, you won't have what you are looking for in life. So.
Well said. It's great. I don't think I have anything to add to that. That's great.
That's what I keep thinking every time you finish. I'm like, mic drop. Okay.
Exactly. That was really good. Oh, that's really true. No, I think it's good. Even you sharing it, it's like that makes you accountable. That makes you, as you share that with people, and like, oh, now I need to do that. But no, I think that, Brendan Burchard talks about, he talks actually about fitness and how that can bring energy to other parts of your life. And so I try to work out like 5-6 days a week. After this, I'm going to go on a probably 5 to 12 mile run. And I'm training for a Spartan race. So that's another goal thing that I do. But by doing those things, like, it brings energy back to my business, right? It's hard when I'm running up a hill or a mountain to like be thinking about work. And so then when I come back to it fresh. I come back to it. Oh, okay, here's what I need to do. Here's what's going on. And it is amazing how, I don't know. I just think sometimes we think we got to work all the time. We got to work all the time. But some of the most creative ideas from work, and this is kind of universally thought of, is that, people get ideas while they're in the shower. They get ideas while they're out working out. They get ideas when they're working in the yard. And a lot of really well-known and successful people, that's happened. So you got to have this, especially if you're a creator and you're creating things. And you have that. A lot of people just go do a job and there's no chance to create. I mean, you're creating something in the job, but you're not really the one who's like, how do I settle this up, right? You don't have that ability. But if you are an entrepreneur or you're trying to become that, you have an incredible opportunity to do that, which I think is amazing.
And I will add to that. The only time I can on this conversation, because everything you said is my job. To extend that actually is to say, if you're looking to become an investor, right? We're investing in our relationships. We're investing in our finances, in apartments, and whatever it is that you're investing in, that is your creation right there. Anytime we're investing, we are building into something. So it's not stagnant. And so everyone listening can be that creator. Winston Churchill, Ryan Holiday talks about this in Ego is the Enemy, I believe it was. I'm looking over at my stack of books over there. And he talks about Winston Churchill laying bricks. And he would go and stillness is a key is where this story where he weaves that in. And stillness doesn't have to be complete, like you're talking about. I can go for a run and that creates stillness in my life. That creates the white space that I need, because our brains have to have that break. We can't constantly be in the grindstone. Winston Churchill, he was still, quote unquote, because he would go and lay bricks. He learned how to do this, and he would actually dictate to somebody there all of his ideas as he's laying bricks. So now we have tools like iPhones and everything that we can just have that. We can make recordings. We can dictate directly into our phones if we need to. But inviting that stillness and that white space that you're talking about is really imperative. But it's not what we're taught to do. Most of us are taught be productive, and that creates challenges.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think, and this is the reason. I think it's a kind of one of the challenges of our culture is that something like 65% of people don't like their jobs, or they don't like their bosses. They don't like what they do. And a lot of it comes from, once you get to be in your 30s or 40s, you're pretty skilled at what you do. So if you're a teacher, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're whatever you are. I was in sales. I mean, after 6 to 12 months of selling for a company, it was kind of like, okay, I kind of know what to do. I know who the people are. I know how to sell it. And it was kind of just doing the work. And I feel like a lot of times when we stop learning new things, we stop applying ourselves, we stop growing. And I think in a way, it actually is a form of death where our body isn't necessarily physically dying, but our brain starts to die. And I think that just the people that I admire, they're always, even, they're older, they're always engaging. They're always curious. They're always looking at new things. How can I, work on this or work on that? And so I think, if it doesn't have to be a job, it could be with your family. And I think about that with my daughter. How can I create experiences that are going to be really memorable that as she gets older, I'm really glad we did that. I'm glad we had that Legoland pass. We went to Legoland, and she that's her favorite place in the world. So
it's a phenomenal place. We loved Legoland when the kids were little. Yes. Yeah.
So, you've been there. So, but just the idea of giving yourself the space to do it. I mean, I think it's huge, and because it's surprising. Like, I used to be at the gym, and I write music as well. I've written about 100 songs over the years, and I would just start getting lyrics while I'd be doing the bench press or something. And so I'd be grab my phone, I just start taking notes in there. And so I think the idea of just being able to access different parts of our lives and to take the pressure off, but just give space. It's like to give space for this creativity, or to give space for, praying, or whatever the experience is, or just reflecting, I think is important. And in our culture, we don't give ourselves a lot of space.
I love that. It's absolutely imperative to have that space. So when it comes to, we're going to have to wrap this up, unfortunately. I love this. I knew this was going to be a fantastic conversation just because we've had the privilege of actually meeting in person and talking face to face and everything. I'm like, I already know this is going to be a phenomenal conversation. And I would just want you to know, I appreciate your transparency and your high level of vulnerability. And when we're willing, those of us who are willing to offer that to those around us, and for you and I, we offer that on a higher level because we create content that goes out there. But when we're willing to do that, we're actually setting this other example and giving other people permission to have that level of vulnerability or have their own breakthroughs. And so I hope that this has been really inspiring and helping those of you listening to just listen to some feedback in your own life and see where that leads you, and being courageous to take those next steps. And I know I've had a lot of investors, I don't know if you've faced this over the last several months, where there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and I don't know, maybe I should just hang on to my liquidity. Maybe I shouldn't invest over there. Maybe I should. And all of these heads spinning, because they're uncertain and there's fear and there are all these voices in the world saying X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And it's really, it can really affect people as they want to take those next steps. And it might be, I want to take the next step to carve out time to create experiences with my kids, to invest in them. Or I want to take that next step and grow my real estate portfolio, but I'm scared. So how would you encourage someone who is at that point of fear? They're in the starting blocks, or maybe they've even taken their first step, but they're polarized. They're nervous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's very normal. I mean, we have our status quo. We're comfortable with what we know. We're comfortable with our job and our family. And I've heard it described this way by my friend Robert Helms. He says that you have your comfort zone, and then you've got a panic zone out here, right? And in between those two is a growth zone, right? So it's somewhere that like you'll do it where it feels like a stretch. It feels like it's a goal. It feels like it's an aspiration, but you do it, but it doesn't. It creates that kind of feels a little uncomfortable. It's like when you start working out, I lost 30 pounds 5 or 6 years ago, and it wasn't comfortable. Like I didn't like doing it, but the more I did it, the easier it became. And it just became that, it wasn't panic, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. But it was like, okay, this is uncomfortable, right? So that's an area when we can get comfortable taking those steps. And I think it really helps if you get around other people that are doing the same. I mean, Jim Rohn, ROHN, has this quote, says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so, it just almost in every level, if you just take, these are my 5 friends, well, what is their net worth? What is their fitness activity? What are their habits? Do they smoke? How do they treat their family or their spouse? Like all those things are going to impact how you treat others. So if you want to change it, you can change the people around you. That's why you and I, we go to events. We're part of groups or masterminds or other things, is we get around people that are at the next level. And what it does, I've realized, you may have to pay to be in the room, or it may be expensive, whatever, but it actually pulls me up to the next level, and it pulls me to be able to become better. And that's something that I am so grateful for. But I just think it doesn't have to be some big, huge, lofty, aspirational thing. It can just be like, hey, I want to change this area of my life, and here's one step I'm going to commit to do. And then just telling a friend, hey, I want to do this, or would you go with me? Would you be a part of this with me as well? And, having peer support is huge as well.
That is so huge. And to your point, in Atomic Habits, he talks about, if your friends are overweight, the likelihood of you being overweight is something like 85 or 90%. If your friends are athletic, the likelihood of you being athletic is, 85, 90%. The impact of the people that we are surrounded by, that we choose into our circle, is significant, and it's really important. Doesn't mean you guys have to go and write off all your friends. You're not saying that, but invite other people into your life that are going to be willing to challenge and support you. Bronson and I were talking earlier about, I have some friends locally that I've become deeper friends with because we're entrepreneurs. There aren't many of us in this little small town that are thinking along these lines. And we go and we spend a day together, and it's incredible the transformation that happens, which that ended up turning into, now I have a small women's group that meets once a month that just supports each other. And the growth that's taking place there is huge. So finding those and creating, if you don't have it, I didn't have that in my small town. So if you're thinking I'm a have not, I don't have, poor me, I don't have this available, then guess what? You have that dream within you, and that dream is there not just for you, but that will affect others around you. So that means you get to create something. So go create. If you don't have what you want, go create it.
That's great. It's a great word.
Bronson, I appreciate you carving out time in the middle of your retreat. And I'm wondering, how would you like people to connect up? Because they're going to want to connect up with you because you're amazing. And so
thank you. I appreciate that. No, it's great to be here. And I love this show. You're really doing a great job on this show, Julie. So thank you. Yeah. So if we want to connect, I have a I create a lot of material, different things. I'm on social medias, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that. At my website, bronsonequity.com, which is my business. I have a free report about how to use inflation to your advantage. So that's a free download. It's about 50 pages, just different strategies to take advantage of it rather than be hurt by it. If people want to send me an email, you can do it at bronsonequity.com. I'm also part of a group called the Kingdom REI, which is a kind of a faith-based mastermind group where we teach people how to syndicate or how to find deals. And it's been awesome. But I love connecting with anybody talking about personal growth or fitness or growing their wealth. So let's connect.
Awesome. Amazing conscious investors. Please remember that adventure belongs on the trail, not in your investing, not in your personal life, not in your financial life, not in any part. Adventure only belongs on the fun trails of life. So if you need support in any of those ways, through high performance coaching or through learning how to invest in apartments, please make sure you schedule a time so that we can connect up and talk and I can help you out. And as always, until next time, live big, love bigger. What's the big deal about investing in apartments? Why is it better than investing in a slew of single-family homes? I've compiled a lot of information on why investing in a multifamily, also known as apartments, will help you reach your investment goals. Head over to 3keysinvestments.com and download the Why Invest in Multifamily guide today.